I'm happy to begin this State of the City address with the announcement that the Cora Apartments project is finally under construction. Hi, my name is Jason Wedel, and I'm the Prior Lake City Manager. And for years and years, I've been talking about this project next door to City Hall starting, and it's finally here. The two houses that were here have been removed, and this $30 million project is now starting to come out of the ground. The Cora Apartments will bring 105 new market rate apartments to the downtown area. Each unit will have underground parking with 135 stalls, which equates to 1 stall per bedroom, and that is more than any of the other apartments in Prior Lake, such as Lakefront Plaza and the Grainwood, that contain only 1 parking stall per unit or less. For you and me, there will be a new restaurant, rooftop bar, and an additional 28 public off-street parking stalls and 6 on-street parking spots. It will be messy for a bit downtown. Utilities are being installed and parking is limited. However, construction is expected to be completed by mid-2027. Another location that's been on the minds of many is the old Burger King site. It is now officially a Dunkin' Donuts and Baskin Robbins with a drive-through. While the building may still look a little bit like the home of the Whopper, it definitely has the vibe of Dunkin'. Now open. We are here at the new Chula's Mexican Latin Food and Spirits restaurant, which is scheduled to be open on May 22nd. It is a beautiful new brick building in the spot that was once the old T-Shirts and More building. They are occupying half of the space, and the other half of the space is going to be available for a future occupant. So be looking for that ribbon cutting soon, and they're opening on May 22nd. The Prior Lake Rotary Club had a $1 million signature project contest, and the winner was Spot's Last Stop. The funds for this contest were raised from the music fest that the Rotary Club provides every year in Lakefront Park. Now we have Spot's Last Stop, where they provide homes for rescued animals. Walking into a store to legally buy marijuana was never on my bingo card when I became city manager, and it's still a little surreal. Flame and Flora is now open and operated by the Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux community. The other dispensary in town is Aurora Cannabis. By state law, cities must allow a minimum of 1 cannabis retailer for every 12,500 residents. Prior Lake's population is nearly 30,000, so we are required to allow up to 3. 1, 2, 3. The Park Place garage condos are open and for sale. This project turned what was once a vacant property into a garage condominium project that has opportunities to store all kinds of stuff and has been a great addition to our city's tax base. Here we are on the north side of town at what is the site of the newest daycare facility coming to Prior Lake. Lightbridge Academy, which is right behind me, broke ground a couple of weeks ago, and they are well underway with their new building. Also on this site is going to be the home of a future 140-unit apartment project that will be breaking ground likely in 2027. Across the street, across County Road 21, is the Veerling property. Pulte Homes has that property under contract, and they are moving forward with a proposal for a master plan community that will include a variety of life cycle housing options, which will include single-family homes, townhomes, and patio homes. A few quick ones to wrap things up. A Valvoline instant oil change is now open between Caribou and Tractor Supply Company. Prior Lake Revival 2, just off of Eagle Creek and Duluth Avenues, will add another strip of businesses to this lot. And here at McKenna Crossing, they will be expanding and adding approximately 70 units of 55 and older apartments to this site. So from dining to donuts, this is just a taste of what's happening in Prior Lake as we continue to grow.
So that's just a little glimpse of what we've got going on. We're going to dig into it a bit more here this morning. So for the presentation today, what I've got on the agenda is going through our development, current and upcoming. We'll talk through the street projects for this year. Every year the city does a pretty major street project. Some updates on the fire department and the police department. Where we're at with the state legislature this year. We've been very active the last few years as a city at the state level. And then finally an update on our parks. So for development, we talked a little bit about this last year. So this is our orderly annexation area. The city entered into a new agreement with Spring Lake Township a couple of years ago. So on this map, what you see in the brown tan color is what's included in the orderly annexation area. The blue is already within the city limits, and the red is the portion that will ultimately stay in Spring Lake Township in perpetuity. So what we are going through right now is called an AUAR, an Alternative Urban Area-Wide Review, and it's a big environmental document, and it looks at where all of our infrastructure is going to go. So where are our sewer pipes going to go, our water pipes, storm water ponds, roads, and we look at how this whole entire area is going to ultimately get built out so we can plan for it as incremental developments start coming in. How does that fit into the big picture, and how do their pieces match up with ultimately the infrastructure that we need to serve that entire area? So that plan was approved by the City Council on April 28th. We're in a review period waiting comments, final comments from state agencies or local jurisdictions around us, and then we'll finalize it, and that will help developers if they're coming in with a project. Typically you would have to do your own, they call it an environmental assessment worksheet, but because we have this document in place, they can bypass that step and allow them to move forward with their development process quicker, which will save them, 6 months probably in their development timelines. So this document is going to be good for 5 years. And what we included in there, so this is a land use map. So the different colors represent different types of land use. So the yellow, for example, is single-family homes. Some of the lighter colors are more multifamily homes, and the purplish colors represent commercial and industrial. The map on the left is what we had currently in our comprehensive plan the last time we did it. We're coming up on our 10-year timeline where we have to update our comp plan per the Met Council. So the map on the right represents where we're anticipating going with our comp plan. So the map on the right has more density. As a city, we have to meet certain density requirements per the Met Council. So for Prior Lake, previously for residential, we had to average 3 units per acre for residential housing. And that's the combination of single family, multifamily, and apartments. Now, on this next round of plans, we're gonna have to be at 3.5. So they've increased the density we have to hit as a city, because ultimately, all this development, all the sewer that comes from these projects flows to a treatment plant in Shakopee right along the river there, along Highway 101. So the Met Council really dictates to some degree what we can and cannot do as a city. They tell us the density we have to hit, and then we can determine where it makes sense to put that density. The other thing we've done on the map on the right is increase the amount of acreage for commercial and industrial properties. That's something we in the city of Prior Lake are always looking to add, as Prior Lake is vastly, residential. I think we're about 93% residential and maybe 7% commercial and industrial. So from a tax-based diversification, we're always looking to grow that.
What I want to jump in with is Jason's talking about the density and working not only with our comprehensive plan, but the Met Council and the upwardly guided 3.5. I've spoken with many of you about some of the legislative proposals that have been coming out of St. Paul that we have fought in opposition to over the last 5 years. Specifically, what those legislative proposals would do would be not simply an overlay, but essentially obliterate what the Met Council has guided for density. And the proposals are up to essentially, by right, upwards of 6 units per acre, irrespective of pre-existing zoning. And that is something that as you're planning for infrastructure, obviously pipes have finite capacities, roads have finite capacities. The way I explain it at the legislature is, you can take a Monopoly board, for those of us that have played Monopoly, and we know what it is to put 1 greenhouse, 2 greenhouse, and then slap a hotel on there. Well, in Monopoly, you have infinite infrastructure, right? There's pipes that surround the Monopoly board. That's not the way a city is built. So we anticipate that those legislative initiatives are going to continue to come forward We're right now bracing for it in 2027. We dodged another one in 2026. But stay tuned, and your attention to that as we come around, it is not simply crying wolf. It's real stuff that in this area would have significant and unfortunately devastating ramifications.
So what those numbers on the side represent, so that of the 2,700 acre total study area, about 1,500 acres is low density residential, so that's LDR. That's traditional single family. Then you have 355 acres of medium density residential, so those are more like townhomes. And you have 40 acres of high density residential, which are more like apartments. And then we have 140 acres of general business, 330 acres of industrial, and 150 acres of business park. This map is a little messy, but this is how they model our water system. It's obviously not going to get built like this, but showing the cross connections. And what I really just wanted to emphasize on this slide is when we talk about infrastructure needs, to build this area out, the city's going to need to drill 3 more wells. We're going to have to build another water tower. And then at the top of the screen, there's a little green box that says WTP. That's our water treatment plant. That's a plant that we built jointly with the Shakopee, Mdewakanton, and Sioux. When we built that plant, we sized it for this area to ultimately be excuse me, served. So there are a couple filter cells that are just the concrete basic framework for it, but we now need to add all the equipment and build it out and make it functional to add that additional capacity, so that's an extra $2 million for that. So that's just on the water side what it takes to provide service for this area.
I'd like to give a quick shout out to the SMSC. This is our partnership with the SMSC. They're the best neighbor we, the city of Prior Lake, could ever have. Of course, their flag is here in our council chambers. It was the first flag exchange. This water treatment plant, we are all tied together with our water, and conversations with the tribe around this area and development and additional other shared partnering, those conversations taking place as we speak. So the relationship with the tribe in and around development, in and around growth, continues to actually strengthen the relationship between Prior Lake and the tribe. And they've been just an awesome partner all the way along.
Absolutely. So on the transportation side, on this map, the roads that are shown in that bluish teal color, those are kind of the collector roads that we anticipate traversing through the area. And then, of course, we've got the county roads. And there are going to be some improvements that are going to be happening in the actually pretty near future. The intersection by where Sailor's greenhouse is, excuse me, there's going to be a roundabout constructed there at 17 and 12 next year. And then the intersection of 13 and 282, MnDOT is currently studying that. I'm losing my voice. Sorry. And they're looking at a potential roundabout there in 2030. So there are some transportation improvement projects that are already in the works anticipating some of this growth. A couple of quick updates on the actual developments that we've had submittals for at the city. We've got 2 of them that are being considered right now. The first one being Campbell Shores. So again, this is right across the street from Sailor's Nursery, just north of the D.R. Horton development that went in a few years ago. This would be 62 lots of single-family development. The other project is the Pieper family property just to the west. They're also looking at doing some single-family and then some detached villas in there. That project has approximately 200 lots proposed in it. Moving out of the orderly annexation area, we talked a little bit about this in the video. This is the Veerling property, so to orient you, the very top of the slide is County Road 42. The left edge is County Road 21. So this is kind of right across the street from where our fire station is located on 21, if you're familiar with that area. So Pulte has this area under contract. They're in the process of working through their approvals. This would be 4 different housing product types. So you've got attached row homes, townhomes, single-family small lots and single-family larger lots. So this would include Fountain Hills Drive, kind of in the top right corner where the Holiday gas station is. If you're familiar with that, that is Fountain Hills Drive that runs behind it. It'll ultimately get extended further west and connect to County Road 21 right there at the fire station. So that road would get built as part of this project as well. And everyone always asks if that's going to trigger a signal or not. And that's something that the county is aware of and something we're going to watch. And if the traffic volumes warrant it, that would likely be a potential new signal at some point. Here's a little smaller 11-lot single-family subdivision that's moving forward. This is also in the same general area. On the left on the aerial photo, that's the Holiday gas station. So this is just a little east along County Road 42. It's an infill development, so it'll extend Bluebird Trail to Rolling Oak Circle and create 11 single-family lots. Which, just speaking of single-family lots in general, as a city, our lot inventory over the last few years has really dwindled down to very little. For many, many years, our average home construction was roughly 150 homes per year. Last year, I think we had 33. And it's not because there aren't builders wanting to build here. There aren't any lots to build on. So seeing some of these subdivisions moving forward to provide that lot inventory is going to be good for the city. This is Aspen Ridge. So this is on the south end of town, right off of Highway 13. It's already built. There were a couple of models in the spring parade of homes. So if you follow the parade of homes, you would have been out there and seen those houses. They're very nice. The lots turned out beautifully. There's a lot of natural wetlands and topography that make the views out there really spectacular. And I'm trying to remember, we have Keyland Homes, and I'm trying to remember the other builder, but there's two different builders on that site. Getting more into the higher density residential. So this is the proposed apartment project that is being sited at what is currently the school district service offices. They're selling their building and moving into one of the elementary schools. So they're selling their building, and then there was a vacant lot immediately next door to it. So combining those two parcels, we've got Roars looking at doing a approximately 170 unit, 4-story market rate apartment project. We mentioned this in the video a little bit. So this is Lightbridge Academy. They broke ground a few weeks ago. This is right along County Road 42, just to the east of 21, or west of 21, excuse me. The Jeffers Waterfront Apartments is that apartment building you can see that's existing in the upper left corner. That got built a couple of years ago. So this is right across the street from it. So we'll have another daycare, which is something we hear a lot about in Prior Lake, is just the need for daycare facilities. It seems like everyone is maxed out and we're always looking for more. So this should be a good addition. Then the property on the graphic on the right side shows the future apartment project that's also going to go on that site. And we mentioned that in the video as well. That's a 140 unit market rate apartment that's likely to break ground next year. And I should point out, and I don't know if the mayor is going to comment on this, when we talk about, again, trying to maximize commercial development in the city, especially along corridors like 42 and 21, when the developer originally approached the city about this site, it was going to be 2 apartment buildings, one along 42 and then one on the south side of that property. And the council said, we want to see some commercial there, so that's why we're getting the daycare, and there's also a future commercial pad that's yet to be determined whether it's going to be built, but it's adding to that commercial tax base.
And I guess the only comment I'd add is, indeed, the push for the residential apartments has been significant. The council and Casey McCabe has delivered the news time and time again to developers. Zone commercial, want to ensure that it stays commercial. If I can, back onto my soapbox, some of the legislative proposals essentially obliterate commercial zoning. that would then enable, with passage, residential to go on any land zoned commercially. These are the sorts of proposals so that as we look to do so, and when we say to our legislators, one of the key things that they talk about in terms of driving density in housing is walkable communities, that we believe keeping people out of their cars, this is from the legislative on high, and to our point is, well, we don't have many of the services that one could walk to. So we have really done all that we can to protect our commercial zoning, to say no to the bird in the hand relative to development, to say, no, we definitely want the commercial, we want the services for our community. So you don't need to drive to Shakopee, you don't need to drive to Savage, you don't need to go north of the river to get what you're looking for.
Another project, so this is at McKenna Crossing, so this is by Shepherd of the Lake Church, just to orient you. There's a large green area, grass area, that is now being proposed for this 72-unit, basically expansion of the McKenna Crossing facility. So this would be a 55 and older apartment project, and they're looking to advance this here in the next year as well. So I know this is in high demand. I've heard of the waiting list to get into McKenna Crossing. People are waiting many, many years to try to get in there. So this is going to be, I think, filled up really quickly. This is a project that just opened earlier this year. This is Hope's Portage. This is right immediately to the west of Shepherd of the Lake Church. This was a facility that is going to be serving homeless families in the Scott County area. The county and CAP partnered to make this project happen, and there's a variety of apartment sizes, but it's really meant for families and kids that are, for whatever reason, looking for homes. They're out on their luck a little bit right now, and the average stay, I think, is going to be roughly 12 to 18 months in there. So it's a very nice facility that the county built, and we're happy to have it in our city.
Coming on this one, and actually the line that says partnerships with, there are partnerships with CDA, SMSC. I would point to this project as what makes Scott County different than Hennepin County, Carver County, Dakota County. This project would not have happened if there were not collaborative forces across the whole of the county. School districts, both Prior Lake, Savage area schools stepped up to support this. As I became educated on, there are 15 housing insecure families every night in the city of Prior Lake. Sofa surfers, as they are oftentimes termed, for a host of reasons. Hope's Portage provides that location, that spot for those families and others. But this truly was a collaborative effort that, as you look at what makes us different, scale, of course, but we talk with each other, meet with each other, align around things and needs like this. And this is just a great example.
Another project that is actually wrapping up, we've talked about this in years past, so this is over by Ponds Park. This was a parcel of property that had gone undeveloped for many years. Just, I think it's because it's a very difficult site topographically and with the trees. But working with Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity, there are 3 4-unit buildings on this site. 2 of the first buildings are completed, and those units have been sold to income qualified folks, and now we're just finishing up the 3rd and final building. So jumping into street projects, every year we try to keep up with our street system. We have roughly 110 miles of streets throughout the city, and so making sure we're staying on top of it and doing as much as we can to maintain those, because after 50 years they start to fall apart and we need to replace them. So it's important that we do this type of work. On top of that, Prior Lake, especially in our older areas, historically have sewer pipes and water pipes that were made out of materials that haven't necessarily held up well over time. Clay sewer pipes, cast iron water mains that have rusted and corroded. So we end up digging up the utilities at the same time we're doing the streets for a lot of this, which can be intrusive and not fun to live through if you're a resident that happens to live on one of those streets. But what we're putting in the ground now as far as PVC plastic water main and the materials we're using, they should last 100 years. And we're going to be in a much better shape when we get this done. But so this is a pretty ambitious project we're doing over a couple of years. This is the Northwood Road. On the north side of the photo there is County Road 82. The different colors represent the different types of projects we're doing. So everything in red is full street reconstructions. That's where we're tearing literally everything out of the ground, the sewer pipes, the water pipes, the storm sewer, the streets, everything. The blue, those are newer areas where we can come in and just mill up the top 2 inches of the pavement. We leave the curb and gutter mostly in place, and we repave it. And then the areas in yellow where they're just a little too far gone to do a mill and overlay, so we're tearing out all the pavement all the way down to the gravel, but we leave as much of the curb and gutter in place as we can, and we do some spot repairs. So that is this year's project. So having Northwood Road as that major collector between County Road 12 to the south and County Road 82 to the north is obviously disruptive for the city, and we're working through it as quick as we can. But this is going to be a really nice project when it's done. We're also adding in some sidewalk where there were gaps in sidewalks along that road, which will provide for pedestrian access that didn't exist before as well. So just a couple quick updates on some of the other departments here in the city. On the fire department side, we moved to full-time fire in 2023, and it's been a hugely successful transition. Our call volume continues to increase dramatically every year. So in 2024, compared to 2025, our calls went up by 282 over the year. So we're at 2,289 calls for service in 2025, and about 80% of that is medicals. So when we went to full-time fire, all of our firefighters are all trained EMTs as well. So before we had full-time fire, Scott County Dispatch, if there was a medical call, they would call the police department first, and then if the police department needed help, they would call the fire department. And it just, the time, you can imagine with that process, you lose minutes, and sometimes minutes matter. And so now, any medical call in the city of Prior Lake, Scott County Dispatch immediately calls our fire department. We added a truck. It's a pickup truck. It's an F-350 just for medical calls, so we're not rolling the fire engine necessarily every time we have a medical call, which has allowed us to be very nimble and to get to people that need the help really quickly.
That service, of course, is also the entirety of Spring Lake Township and the city of Credit River. And so our thanks to that partnership. But when you look at, is it 75 square miles, our service area?
Yep.
75 square miles. So just the geography that Prior Lake Fire covers is significant. Yeah, the F-350 has really reduced our response to medical calls.
We also added a fire marshal this past year, so that position, it helps with, on the building inspection side for new construction, making sure they're meeting fire code and such. But it's also been a lot of pre-planning. You can see here we did 493 pre-plans. So they will go to a business, say like AK Pizza in the business park, where they've got specialized equipment. They might have certain chemicals. They might have different processes and machinery in their facility. So going in there ahead of time and planning for, if there was a fire, how would you approach it? How would you tackle it? And they have those plans now preloaded in their computers and their laptops in their vehicles, in their emergency vehicles. So when they're rolling and showing up to a site where there's an incident, those pre-plans automatically come up, and they can use that to intelligently approach to that situation and do it safely and effectively. The other thing that we've rolled out is a new software program that helps us integrate those pre-plans, and later this year we're going to be rolling it out to the public as well. So if you have a business and you know of something specific about your business, you're actually going to be able to go onto our city website, go onto that software, and add notes if you think they're appropriate for your situation. Lastly, fire station number 2, which is the one on County Road 21 and just south of 42. That facility really hasn't been used to its full extent. All of our full-time firefighters are operating out of fire station number 1 right now. So we are looking at potentially making some modifications there that would allow firefighters to be stationed there and sleeping quarters and that type of thing that would allow them to staff that station a little bit more effectively and roll right from that location rather than everybody coming from fire station number 1. Police department. So last year we had a lot of discussion with the city council on the use of drones. Drones are a tool that have become very effective for our police department to use to help them in situations where they can go get eyes on what's going on without putting officers in harm's way. So we have a number of officers now that have gone through the training. It's intense training. It's almost like being a pilot. You have to go through the FAA and get certified and go through a lot to be able to operate these drones. And we've used them a lot. Most notably, we noted in the bottom of the slide here, last year when House Speaker Melissa Hortman was murdered, the suspect for that was ultimately found by our officer in a farm field out in Carver using one of our drones. We were one of many drones that were out looking for him, but it just happened that our officer was the one who actually found him. So that just shows you how we're putting these tools to use. You may have also seen around town, we have about a half a dozen of these, they're called flock cameras. They're primarily on the major county road intersections. So these are basically automatic license plate readers. So they will detect vehicles as they travel through the city of Prior Lake. They're not dissimilar to what our squad cars have had for decades. The police cars already have automatic license plate readers, so when police officers are driving through the city, if there's a car going in the opposite direction and a license plate gets read and there's an alert or there's a warrant for that person, it will automatically come up on their computers. But these are fixed cameras that are tied into the network of flock cameras throughout the state so that if there is a specific person that police are looking for and it gets hit on one of these cameras, we will automatically get an alert. An example of how these have been used, a couple of years ago, there was a woman that was murdered in St. Paul, and the person that did it happened to drive and had gone all the way out to Belle Plaine, and they caught him because Belle Plaine had a flock camera that picked up his license plate, and they knew that he had driven into town, and they were able to track him down. So these cameras, I mean, they've been in the news a lot, so I will acknowledge that I think there's some people that are concerned about, Big Brother watching, but police departments cannot just look and just see randomly who's driven through town. There has to be a very specific case number associated. If you're looking for a specific car, you can't just access the data and look at it for fun. The data gets deleted every 30 days, so if there's not a case assigned to any of it, it just automatically gets deleted off the system. And then the city gets to set parameters on who this data gets shared with. So our data does not get shared with the federal government. It does not get shared with others. We limit it to other cities within the state, so that's how it gets used. But there's a lot of other cities that have added to this network. There's even the Wilds neighborhood chose to do it on their own. Their homeowners association added some flock cameras to their neighborhood, which are all also now tied into the network. E-scooters and bikes and motos, this has been a hot topic, and it's getting more interesting every year. Last year, as a city, we spent most of our time trying to focus on education. I think there was just a lot of misunderstanding on what is legal and what isn't. what can be ridden by whom and where. So we put out that flyer and tried to just educate parents and kids. This year, we're stepping it up a notch. We are now enforcing, so our police officers will stop and talk to a child if they're not adhering to the rules. I think the biggest violator we see are what we would call the e-moto bikes. So they're electric. They don't have pedals. They look like a motorcycle. They ride like a motorcycle. It's just they have an electric engine versus a gas engine. Those are illegal everywhere unless you're on your own private property. So you can't have them on city streets. You can't have them on the trails. But you see them everywhere. So if our police officers see someone riding one of those, they will stop them and talk to them, and they will call their parents, and they will have their parents come and pick them up and pick up their e-moto and bring it home. So we are doing a lot more enforcement level to try to, ultimately it's about safety for the kids. Many of these kids riding these vehicles, they haven't gone through driver's training. They don't know the rules of the road. They're putting themselves in unsafe situations. And so for everyone's safety, we're really trying to ramp up our enforcement of these vehicles. We also did update our golf cart ordinance last year. We've always allowed golf carts in the city of Prior Lake, which is, it's kind of a fun thing. It's kind of unique to Prior Lake, being a lake community. People use their golf carts to go to the beach or go to their docks and other things. What we didn't have in our ordinances was how old you had to be to drive one. So last year, City Council approved an ordinance update that makes it basically exactly the same as a car. So if you've got a driver's permit and your parent is sitting next to you in the front seat, you can drive a golf cart on the street. Or if you have a driver's license, you can drive one on your own. If you're 13 years old, you should not be driving a golf cart on the city streets. For elections coming up, it's crazy how early election season starts with early voting. But with the primary coming up on August 11th, that means early voting starts 46 days before that, which is June 26th already. Which is why the road in front of City Hall right now is being torn up now, was so that we could get that work done before election season starts in June, because we're required to have ADA accessibility and make sure people have access to City Hall to come and vote. So there's a lot of coordinating to make sure that that happens. And then we have obviously the general elections on November 3rd with early voting starting on September 19th for that. This year we will have 2 city council seats that are going to need to be filled. So filing for that starts in July. And if anyone is ever interested in being an election judge, it's actually a fun process, and you get to really understand and learn how that election process works. We're always looking for election judges, so that's the link on our city website if you want to ever sign up and pursue being an election judge. You don't have to have any history or skills necessarily. We train you and we do all of that, so it's very easy.
All I want to add here, and not just to beat up the folks in St. Paul, but you will hear us, but to beat up the people in St. Paul. Unfunded mandates. This is a classic example of an unfunded mandate. The legislature want to, of course, open up the broader windows of early voting, and we can do that locally. Well, that needs to be staffed. And this now has added significant workload, not only to the city of Prior Lake, but all the cities and the county, which has necessitated us doing some additional hiring and additional staffing, money. So laws get passed in St. Paul. They don't come with money, which then enables us to raise our tax levy on all the citizens in order to provide what the legislator, essentially we get voluntold to do things, much like you might do in your own home, and elections are one of those items.
Yeah, because we have to have 2 election judges for that early voting here, because you can't just have one, you have to have 2. And it's all day, every day for those 46 days. And
Sometimes 2 voters come through on those days. 2 election judges, 8 hours.
So on the state legislature, I think Mayor Briggs has hit on this a few times already. So, but basically just the whole housing discussion and maintaining what we would call local control and having the ability to dictate and determine and provide guidance on where certain types of housing should be located based on our infrastructure and our ability to serve that. As the mayor has mentioned, there's been a lot of discussion in some of these bills that would allow, by right, multifamily housing to go in single-family neighborhoods, apartments to go in commercial areas, and our infrastructure isn't sized for that. Our water main pipes aren't sized for that. Our sewer pipes aren't sized for that. So the implications of that, it's not just putting a building somewhere, it's how many miles of sewer pipe do I have to rip up to now support that, and who's going to pay for that? So it's been a battle for the last 5 years. We did talk about,
So if the regulations change, what impact does that have on existing structures? Any, or is it just on new structures?
so the question was if there are any legislative changes, what does that mean for existing properties versus, or is it just new construction?
So thank you for the question. Answer is all. The bills as drafted would enable my wife and I to sell our house and put in a 6-plex by right. My next door neighbor to either side would have no voice. They could show up upset that a 6-unit building is going, and no parking. No parking for that. Don't have to have parking. And that would be, as a property owner, my right. And I'd be able to do that on any lot in an R1 residential neighborhood. That is the sort of thing flowing through legislature. And when you take that in existing, you could say, well, that's simply not going to happen. Well, it does happen. It has happened. If you visit the city of Seattle, you will see what's occurred in the city of Seattle. To a lesser extent in Minneapolis. I was just in a meeting with Mayor Kaylee Herr of St. Paul. St. Paul went ahead and passed city ordinance enabling that. Well, what they thought they were going to get is more affordable units, uniformly distributed. What they received from developers is concentrations of high density only around college campuses, where they could get $1,200 a month for a room. So you bring these policies forward thinking that you will do good for those that have need, and what you'll find is capital will find its best use in some of these ordinances. And that's one of the challenges that again, put us, and that was Jason testifying last year and the year before and the year before and the year before. So, but that's where we try to stay on it.
Cannabis, we talked about it in the video a little bit too. So we have 2 dispensaries now in Prior Lake. So that map, what that is showing is parks and schools. So there are rules on where dispensaries can be located as far as proximity to parks and schools. So we put this map together just to show where could you actually locate one. And as a city, we are required to allow up to 3 based on our current population. We currently have 2. The SMSC's Flame and Flora just opened a little bit ago, and Aurora Cannabis has been in place for a little while now, and they're located in what's the old post office building along Highway 13. So parks. So we actually just had a ribbon cutting earlier this week for Ponds Park. We've did 2 phases of improvements there. Phase 1 was a couple years ago. We did a new playground and modified a couple of the fields, and then phase 2 was just this last year. We finished a couple more ball fields, created more green space between the fields, new areas for food trucks to come for tournaments, to park in between the fields, new pavilion, new landscaping, new ADA accessibility. Both phases combined was about $2.5 million worth of improvements. So this was the first major redo of a park pretty much in Prior Lake's history. We've done some maintenance things in other parks, but to do something substantial like this is the very first one. And we have 49 parks in the city of Prior Lake. So, but this was a huge partnership. PLAY helped contribute some significant funds to help make this happen. Our staff were able to secure some grants from the DNR, and then of course the city itself came together to help fund that. But it just turned out to be a new beautiful facility that I think the young kids that are playing baseball today and softball are gonna really, really enjoy. So last year we had a miracle field installed over at Thomas Ryan Park, which is amazing. That new facility was open and they actually had some games there last year. They're going to have some more games now, obviously, through this whole season. That facility is for kids with varying disabilities. That it created a field that has the surface that you can wheelchairs or walking or whatever disabilities you might have, you can play on. It's awesome. So now they're looking to do the playground immediately adjacent to it. There's one there today that's 30 years old. So the goal is to replace that with, again, more of an ADA accessible new playground structure. So we're doing surveys on what folks want to see there, and then we'll start looking at proposals and trying to identify funding sources for it.
Just want to thank PLAY, and also this is a great example of private-public partnership. City provided the land, 100% of the cost of that field came through private funding. And not only to get it built, but there is an endowment or funds set aside to replace the turf there. So the thought of one-time cost to build, but then that winds up transferring that legacy maintenance cost to the taxpayer. This development came with funds and commitment in perpetuity to maintain the facility. Really a huge shift in our park system, and I can't thank the organization enough. And also, aside from the funding, not just to focus on the money, but the aspect of that amenity in our community also is a wonderful sign relative to what we are offering here to our residents and also the visitors that now it will attract into Prior Lake.
Memorial Park, we're just starting the process now of looking at doing a master plan for that property. We've got a survey that went out. We've got a website where people can go on and add comments. Ultimately, we do these master plans so that we can identify what we want the park to look like ultimately. And then once we've got that figured out, then we can start looking at financing and picking off pieces of it, because ultimately doing the whole park all at once typically isn't financially feasible to do all in one fell swoop. So, but when we have a plan and we know what we want it to look like and what things we need to change, we can go and start working with groups and looking at funding and making those improvements. So last year, we had a park referendum. That referendum was the result of many, many years of work. In 2018 is when we started on this. We put a park master plan together where we hired a consultant. We looked at every single park in the city of Prior Lake, and they got evaluated on their condition and their usage, and it identified a little over $120 million worth of needs across our entire park system. And that just comes from most of our parks come through park dedication when a development moves in. So like a developer, like some of the projects we talked about earlier, developer comes in, they either pay the city park dedication fees when they build their subdivision, or they actually build the park itself. So on the front end, those parks don't cost the city any upfront money or capital. 20 years, 30 years, 40 years later, when they all need maintenance, replacement, that's where the city now has to fund that. So that's where we were identifying, obviously, some funding gaps. So we put a referendum forward in the fall just to see if there was any appetite for doing a $60 million referendum that would address roughly half of our parks needs identified in that plan. It obviously did not pass, so the city staff and council have been meeting to talk about, so where do we go from here? So we are reevaluating all of our parks. A lot of our parks have duplicate infrastructure in them. Almost every one of our neighborhood parks is exactly the same. It's got a half basketball court, it's got a little ball field, it's got a picnic shelter, it's got a playground. Maybe not every single neighborhood park has to have those things. Maybe some of them can be green space. Maybe some of them could be more natural areas. So we're looking at that. We also have a lot of parks. There's 49 of them, which for a community our size is a lot. For reference, I think Savage has 24. We have 49. So divesting ourselves of a few of them is also something that's being considered. But ultimately, the goal is we want to have a high-quality park system. So I'd rather have fewer but higher quality parks than having 49 mediocre or not as great parks. So we want to preserve what residents love about our parks, but we also have to make responsible decisions from the fiscal standpoint.
This is going to be one of the most significant opportunities that City Council has this year, without a doubt. As Jason shared, land that was dedicated through park dedication will remain with the city in perpetuity. But there are a number of facilities that have park signs planted in them that did not come by way of park dedication. Came to the city through either acquisition of city taxpayer funds and or tax forfeiture. And it's those areas that we, the city council, have instructed staff. I'd also like to recast the referendum. We got the answer we needed, which was live within your means. One of the things I took criticism at Lunds Byerly's and at the farmers market for putting such a thing on the ballot. Are you tone deaf, Mayor? $60 million for parks? To which I would say, City Council did not need to put it on the ballot. We could have done it on our own with 4 votes of the City Council. We had that decision to make. Do we simply do it, council, go to bonding with 4 votes of the council? Again, I never count votes before we have a conversation. Or do we put it on the ballot? I was one of those voices that said, no, we put it on the ballot and get the answer. What was projected to be a 60-40 vote favorable was exactly, it was a 60-40. But not the way the pundits anticipated, which as I speak now with citizens, it's the answer we needed. And we now have it, which empowers the council to now put us on a sustainable pathway forward for parks. So that's how I would recast that. It did not advance, but our parks initiative and sustainability will advance, and it's going to advance at a more rapid rate. So it's exactly the answer we needed.
Also related to parks is the highway trail along Highway 13. It's something we've been working on over the last several years. Last year, we were able to complete segment 1, which is at the top of the screen, which is that segment from County Road 42 south down to Oakland Beach. Boy, you drive on Highway 13, you see that trail being used a ton already. Completing this trail along Highway 13 is something that we're really focused on. It's been needed. You see residents using the shoulder of Highway 13 all the time, biking, running, electric scooters. I've seen, it's everything. And we've gotten a lot of it completed. We got segment 1 done last year, but the year before that we did segment 5, which is on the south end, just south of Fongs and to the south. And now we're really focused on getting those last two middle segments, 2 and 3, completed. Of course, those are also the most expensive segments of trail. If you look at the topography of that area, along Highway 13, it drops off dramatically along the side of the road. So there are retaining walls and grading and easements and a lot of cost associated with that. So this year, for the first time ever, the city of Prior Lake actually put in a bonding request at the state legislature to help fund this. So we will find out here in the next week or so if we were successful in receiving any funding there. But we've also continued to pursue federal funding. We've been successful. That segment 1 that I just mentioned, we received $1 million of congressionally directed funding from our legislators. So that's Angie Craig and Amy Klobuchar and Tina Smith. They get so much money every year to send back to their districts for specific projects. So we were successful in getting some funds there. We also received some funding from at the federal level for segment 5 the year previous. So we're looking for every funding opportunity we can find, whether it's the state or federal or local. But the goal is to get that segment completed to really make that connection to all the retail and the commercial in 42 all the way into our downtown and our farmers market on Saturdays and our businesses and being able to provide that pedestrian access.
It's been great to see, for those that know 150th, the cross-country teams have put segment 1 now on one of their loops. So I've seen the cross-country, specifically the women's cross-country team, on a couple of occasions. They cross it 150th, grab the trail up to 42 and circle right on back. So just seeing that yesterday, and Jason's getting tired of it when I'm driving north. I'll either send him pictures or I'll just call it, right? Burly stroller being pulled by bicycle on segment 1, golf cart on segment 1. So that segment 1 has knitted together 2 isolated neighborhoods. Actually 3. So this is one I will tell you personally for me is the project that I spend most of the time. If I'm going to ask for funding on anything, because I'm fortunate we're living within our means, this is it. This is it. And to get public support, federal support, or now state support, this is a project that we'd like to see completed.
So that is it for our presentations. I know we're just a tad over 9 o'clock, but we're happy to stand for any questions if there are any.
No state flag questions, please. Dave.
Question on if you did divest of some of the parks, would that the money received out of that divestiture stay in the park system?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So for those that didn't hear it, so if the city does divest ourselves of some of our existing parks that were not through park dedication, that were purchased, as the mayor described, where would those funds go back? And they would, yes, be going right straight back into the park system. So, and that's part of the communication when we do get to that point of potentially divesting of a specific location. Typically, it's in an area where there might be 1 or 2 other parks really close by, and it'll be, well, we're selling this, but we're going to use those funds to enhance this park. So you're going to see the benefit if you live in that immediate area of some of that divestiture. So yes, it will all go right back into the park system.
Are the slides going to be posted online so we can be accessed? People aren't here?
Yeah, so this is being recorded today, so this presentation is going to be streamed on our social media services.
Lori.
So super excited about all the growth and all that, but all these apartments, like, where are all, it just seems like there's an awful lot. And then you've got the homes coming too, which is, great too, but where are these people all coming from?
The question is, where are the people coming for all the apartments that are getting built? That I don't have a great answer on. I do, what I would say as far as the apartments, it feels like it goes in waves. We can go for many, many years and we don't build a single apartment building, and then all of a sudden we have 3 or 4 all at the same time. It's the market. I mean, everything that's been built so far in Prior Lake has all been market rate apartments, so it's developers and investors seeing the need for these types of projects. But as a city, we also have to make sure we do have a requirement to hit those density requirements that I mentioned earlier from the Met Council. We have areas of the city guided for just those types of uses, and we need them to come in. But like the one on like Jeffers Waterfront, for example, that area was originally platted 20 plus years ago, and then you throw in the housing recession in 2008 and things slow down, and so some of that is just now finally coming back and getting built for what we had anticipated.
I've been blown away with the absorption number. These things open, they fill in a nanosecond. Next door here, we've been told it's going to be a third, a third, a third. Third of the residents in this Cora building will be dual income, no kids, 30 younger 30s. That's 1/3 of your folks here. A third will be a single household. So host of reasons that want to stay in close proximity, and that'll be in your 35 to 55. That will be a third of your residents here. Then it will be 55 plus will be the other third. They don't use their ovens. Many of the times we go into these buildings as the apartment swings over in 18 months, the instructions for the oven are still stapled to rack 1. So they dine in restaurants. The median income of these residents will be in the $120,000 a year range. So the economic impact of, and I'm just focusing on Cora because my gosh, this has been 4 years in the making, which was the Beard Group, and knowing who's going to move into this building, and what do they want? They want this park and they want that trail. They want the Big Woods Trail on 21. They're going to have bicycles. They have to have bicycle storage there. So it's interesting to see, Lord, the question on these apartment buildings is who comes. Well, man, they come and they've got the demographic, they've got the split down on the nose. So it's been amazing to see. Let me go, Drew. And then,
Thank you. So kudos to you that the council for navigating the challenges that the Met Council puts upon you as far as build outs.
if I may say, the Met Council's been a friend. Seriously, the Met Council, that through all of this legislative stuff, we said, if we could just hang out with you guys. So thank you.
None of that's been restrictions for.
Yep.
All right, so I guess my question is this. In the case of the district center, for example, it seems like we just go ahead and build a margarita apartment, we take a commercial property, now it becomes a residential property. Why wouldn't we have gone to builders that we'd love to have you come in here and put in a margarita apartment? However, we're going to require a 6 or 12 unit commercial at the base of the building.
Yeah, so the question was related specifically to the school district office and why is that not going, or?
In that, that's just
And-
an example.
and that- yeah.
You could have done it here, you could do it over there, whatever, it's kind of a compromise for both ends of the spectrum.
So a lot of it goes back to our underlying zoning and our land use plans. So as that 10-year process that I described earlier, we look at land uses and zoning, and we put a map together. And so, for example, that school district office area is actually guided for high-density residential, not necessarily commercial. So we try to follow that plan as much as we can. We've been more in a position as the city of trying to even just protect what we do have guided for commercial to stay commercial, not necessarily try to convert what's guided for residential into commercial, if that makes sense. So we put and guide commercial where, the visibility along the major roadways at the intersections, and you try to put it in the spots where developers want it. But it's been a struggle. We just don't have a major road. We don't have 169. We don't have 35W. We don't have some of these major transportation corridors that trigger some of that economic and commercial growth. We really kick and scratch for what we can, and we do definitely try to protect what we've got.
So
Yeah, so related to the intersection of 21 and 42, we've been waiting for commercial for a while. So along 21 here, just south of 42, you've got Little Explorers Daycare. You got the Jeffers Pond Foundation that has a building there with a few tenants in it. So there are also a number of vacant commercial pads right along 21 closer to the road that are still available for somebody to purchase.
So that southwest corner, protected that for commercial.
So that's protected, and then, as we mentioned earlier, that segment right along 42, where the new daycare, Light Bridge, is being built, there's another commercial pad there. On the flip side, on the Pulte, did I have the Pulte?
On the Pulte, you do have a Pulte slide, and on the Pulte, you're going to notice that purple, that's all commercial.
25 acres on that actual corner is preserved
That would be to
for-
the north of Fountain Hills Trail, to the south of 42.
east of 21.
And again, that's acreage that in our land use and zoning, so on those corners, commercial on both sides of 21 and 42 in the zoning as proposed. Nicole and then Becca.
My question's specific on the district office area. So the discussion of switching it over to an apartment, is the school still own it? And will they be able to benefit from that increase in value? Like being able to switch it over to residential? Or is that a discussion you didn't have until after the school?
So the school district property itself, they put it on the market and they're selling it for a price. So they're going to sell it to this developer. So that developer is paying them a value for the land based on its future use. So they're paying it based because they're going to build an apartment. So they're basing it on what the value would be as an apartment project.
But it does add into the tax capacity. Currently, I don't believe that is taxable land. So to the question of does it assist in the school district, I would say yes, it does, in that its valuation now comes onto the tax rolls. A building of that size, I wouldn't want to estimate. I know we've got some developers in the room that can thumbnail, the number on that building, line number of units, 170 units. That's going to add a significant valuation into the tax capacity in the city of Prior Lake, which will pay school taxes, city taxes, and county taxes. Becca, and then
Yeah, so along the lines of the apartments and all that housing development, I know that obviously we're not going to get into school district things today at this meeting, but we keep hearing enrollment's down, right? The schools are struggling. When you talk about the demographic that's kind of expected to make up the core apartments and the fact that all these apartments going in are market rate, a lot of the housing developments we see coming in aren't exactly first home, young family friendly, and the demographics explained of Cora also didn't seem to bring up families coming in. What is the city doing with some of these other developments to try to make sure that, yes, there's some townhomes going in next to single family, but are those townhomes even going to be that accessible in pricing?
Yeah, thank you for the question related to bringing in housing to the city that facilitates families and younger people and students for the school district, et cetera. So yeah, apartments, not necessarily, but so this Pulte development I think is a really good example of having a variety. They would call it life cycle housing. So you look at the townhomes, that's more your entry level price point, which entry level nowadays is upper 300,000, probably close to $400,000. And then you've got they've got some patio homes or villas, which are actually targeted more towards 55 and older, association maintained. And then you've got smaller lot single family that will be probably in that $600,000 range, and then you've got the large lot single family that is probably $800,000. So they're creating a variety of housing product types and price points to try to create that development that will attract a variety of different buyers.
Becca, I share your concern. Our ability.
Even and I know that's also just the price of things right now, but none of that is exactly accessible to young people coming in, and or are we looking at are the apartments going to start offering even a portion of those being some type of an income
So, again, without addressing that question directly, so I can say next door, there were no conversations of that type. We as a city also have to be careful. We can't dictate or say. The way that, right, as these apartments come in, and to your point, number of school-aged children in the core building, I asked the question early on. Answer was 97 units, about 10 school-aged children, core building. So count the number of rooms there for every 10 units, one child. So don't have an answer to that complex question. Median home price in Prior Lake now is
$450 to $500.
500. So market is what the market is. So,
But there's also, I think, creating some of these newer opportunities, especially for the 55 and older. A lot of those folks are in their homes that they raise their kids in, and they haven't found a product that they want to move out of, so they just stay in their home. So when they do finally find something and move out, we are creating that, what we would call that naturally occurring affordable housing, where people are finally moving out of their homes that they've lived in for 40 years and allowing a new couple, a younger couple, to move in and buy that house, for example.
I want to be respectful of time.
Just really quick, do you happen to know if the Savage Police Department is also looking at slightly more enforcing in the E-moto area?
Yeah, the question on the Savage PD and their
Like the Target area, for example?
their enforcement of e-bikes and e-motos.
Enter specifically?
Yeah.
Specifically on the northern entrance?
That I don't know the answer to that, but I know our police departments talk a lot, so I've seen the postings on social media on Target specifically, so I'm sure there's something in the works.
Please.
In lines with that, you mentioned about the golf carts and the new regulations here for golf carts coming from the land of golf cart land here where I live. They have to have a permit with a parent. If they're older than that, do they need a driver's license? Okay. I just wanna make sure.
So the golf carts ordinance basically mimics state law on driving a car on the road, because they are on the roads and they need to operate and drive like they're in a car. So it's, yeah, you have to have a driver's license.
I will be sharing this.
I think that is, again, I think we've overstayed our welcome. I guess we're,
Any other?
well,
forget.
oh,
I have a question. You had, this goes back to childcare, and like Bridge Academy coming in. You mentioned that there are a lot of families looking for care. And I'm just interested if you looked into other schools in the area in terms of what their enrollment looks like before approving another childcare center. And just kind of wondering the intent of where it is, knowing that it's within walking distance to another childcare center there.
Yeah, thank you for the question on the daycare. So the way I phrased it probably wasn't exactly accurate. As a city, we don't necessarily pick, like, say, we want more daycare, so we go out and market and try to bring in daycares. We don't. We have land that's guided for commercial. That could be a coffee shop, that could be Dunkin' Donuts, that could be a daycare. And investors and developers then come to our city and they see what we have for available land, and they choose based on their own market research and their data that they think a daycare will be successful there or not. So it's not so much the city asking for them to come, it's the natural capitalism at work, coming in and proposing a project on a land that's guided for that use.
unrelated but related. I mean, number one question I get is, what are you doing to get Trader Joe's to Prior Lake, Mayor? And short of camping out at a Trader Joe's saying, hey, so picking that investigation, that intelligence really comes, and I'm amazed at how many of those studies, number of vehicles that drive by the front entrance. There's a number of businesses that have been attracted to Prior Lake. We've had conversations, and if they're franchised, we don't have the vehicle trips in front of the frontage that address what the franchise owner, not owner, the corporate wants to see in trips. tripped up on that.
No pun.
Yeah, no pun.
Just a quick question, on those lot clearers, can they be used for, cars that out for repossessions by chance?
There would have to be, if it's criminal or police related, then they can get identified and then they would do a search. So if there is a warrant or if there's a car that's got, yeah, yep.
Drew. All right, yeah, let's have a fun question.
So, you mentioned earlier, we don't have a 169, but
Right.
we have a lake, we got spectacular lake. We thought we have a very underutilized asset in the lake. Do we have any plans to do any type of future, maybe a mini concert area or boardwalk or anything like that, to be a destination?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how to answer that question that was asked about taking advantage of our lake and making Prior Lake a true destination for people to want to come here and using that asset to attract folks. I mean, Lakefront Park, if we had we have a master plan for what we were proposing to do with that park had the referendum passed. Obviously that didn't. That was going to be about $20 million worth of improvements there to help really bring that park to the next level. We're now going to have to try to figure out how we do that more piecemeal and pick off pieces of that. So that's part of it. I mean, is really Lakefront Park is a beautiful park, and yet you can go there and not even really know that the lake is close by. So increasing access to the lake, part of that plan was going to create an access loop down to Watsel's Beach for people to swing through and drop off picnic baskets and do things. And so there was, to increase that accessibility to the lake, that was part of that plan for the exact reasons you mentioned.
Not to address that question, but one I'd like to answer. So when we did the ribbon cutting at Ponds Park, Drew, I had the PLAY director come up, and I caught him off guard, and I said, how many kids will be playing in tournaments on these fields in this park in 2026? His answer, 10,000. And I said, do those kids bring with them a parent or two? And he says, and grandparents. So think about the economic opportunity. What Ponds Park, the investment we made in Ponds Park, we collectively with those grants. Let's say conservatively a child that's playing baseball there in a tournament is going to bring whatever, another 30,000 visitors to Prior Lake in a summer. And he said the restaurants want to know our schedule for exactly that reason. So there are economic engines that are occurring right now, many of which are unrecognized or underappreciated, but the lake certainly could be exactly one of those things. So thank you. All right.
Yeah, thank you.